Thank you so much for joining us here at the summit.
Thank you.
We're fascinated to hear everybody's thoughts about where this industry are going, and you particularly have been quite vocal about how exciting you think the next decade will be.
Well, I think the next decade for our industry, there will be tremendous transformation. And that's because of digital technology, as well as invention of other things like driverless cars, new energy sectors and so on. And that's going to change a lot of the things that we do for cities and especially for the buildings. Yeah. The advent of co-living, co-working is going to change the profile of the people living in cities and living in the buildings. So it's going to be a quite exciting change.
Exciting times, and an industry that needs to be very flexible and nimble for those reasons.
That's right. Well, I guess in the past we've always been on two-dimension thinking. Now with three dimensions such as BIM and virtual design, construction and artificial intelligence, it allows us to do a lot more things. Yeah. For example, now we are designing buildings just by doing center lines. So a lot of our affordable housing in Singapore are now designing using computational BIM. And we are using data analytics to determine the usage of space within the city. So you're going to see a lot of these improvements coming into on stream. And it will challenge the normal assumptions that we use to plan cities and to plan buildings and so on.
What do you think are the key things for creating cities that are livable and are an enjoyable place for people to live?
Well, I think now sustainability and being eco-friendly are probably the two biggest themes, whether it's cities or the buildings that we do. And that's because there's a lot more emphasis on the environment and the care for it. So I guess moving forward, a lot of the cities and a lot of the buildings were primarily centered on those tools. Another aspect is, of course, security. As you know, today in most of the cities, there's a lot of concern with security. So we're incorporating security as part and parcel of our planning and our design criteria. For example, now we are doing the new Terminal 5 building in Singapore for Changi Airport. So that will incorporate security features that is really state of the art and things that we can predict. People coming in, clearing of people, and more efficient ways of identifying people that's transiting within the terminals.
You talked there about being able to predict. How do you future-proof cities? Singapore, where you're based, is somewhere that's been able to create itself as quite a new city, and it's been able to have lots that's incorporated in its buildings. There are plenty of places in the world, like London, where we are now, that have to retrofit all that stuff. So how do places that are creating things from scratch make sure they're future-proof and are able to adapt?
I think one of the things that we do really well in Singapore is to plan our cities a bit more in detail and a bit more disciplined. In our planning, we take into things like modular implementation and the ability to cater to the various systems that we have going forward. So I guess in established cities in the West like London and New York, where a lot of those planning criteria were not in there, to retrofit a city to envelop and embrace this new technology, it's rather costly. And of course, like all the things that we say, if you have a blank sheet of paper, it's easier to start. Yeah. So I guess Singapore benefited from that, in the sense that we started with a blank sheet and we were able to plan ourselves, and our master planning is very detailed.
Do you think that's why perhaps there's been a slight resistance in the past to embracing change, because it's actually really quite difficult to do? And do you think that's changing? Do you think that this industry is now moving forward and seeing that it has to do that?
Yes. Well, I guess it comes back to the education in the universities. If you look at a lot of our university program, they're still very silo. So we have architecture, civil and structure, and M&E. And going forward, you really need people who are skilled in all the various disciplines. So nowadays, we tend not to organize ourselves. into discipline. We tend to organize ourselves into project teams, and every available skill set are then assembled to tackle a particular project. And I guess coupled with that is really a flexible change of mindset. If you can't go into a team discussion with a very fixated way of thinking, what is required and what is good for the particular project. So I guess mindset is an important part, and of course some changes to the way that we teach students nowadays.
You talked there about students. We need the really brightest minds coming into the industry as well. How do you encourage young people to see this as a really exciting, glamorous and great profession to be in?
Well, I think over the last 10, 20 years, a lot of new students don't pick engineering or architecture. They're rather good for law, economics and so on. And that's showing up in the industry nowadays. The quality of the students coming out from the universities are not as good as in the old days. I guess one of the ways in which we can change that is really for us to showcase some of the projects that we have done. That's not very well being done by the engineering faculty and so on. So I guess one of the things that we need to tell people is that in our industry, we shape people's lives, and we actually contribute significantly. The airports that you go through, the roads, the efficient building and all this, because you get a great bunch of technical people behind that project. So to me, really it's showcasing the projects that we do. And as a company, one of the things that we chose is really to go after iconic projects. Projects that our talented people would like to get involved. And therefore, they feel proud that they have contributed to the success of that particular project. So I think you need to do a little bit more marketing in that aspect.
And do you think increasingly a younger generation who perhaps think more about things like carbon neutrality will see this industry as being very important for the future of the planet, say, as well? And that's a great marketing sort of angle for you. Definitely.
I think nowadays young people are more concerned with environment and the impact of climate change, for example. They can feel it every day. So to them, they attach a lot to it because I guess they see the future ahead of them. So I guess in a way, sustainability and the ecosystem being looked after are probably two of the prime concerns of our young people today.
So what do you think are the key challenges now faced by the industry, and how are those addressed going forward?
One of the key challenges is, of course, all of us who are so experienced in the industry comes from the old mindset. To change that mindset is really something that is not easy. And coupled with that, a lot of us are now chasing our KPIs. So when you chase KPIs and you've got to change the way in which you do projects and with the new technology and so on, it's really proving to be quite challenging. So as I said during the panel, one of the things that we are looking at is creating parallel organizations based on new technology, digital technology, BIM, building information modeling, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and build up capability through this separate company. And then over time, reduce our exposure to what I call the traditional way of 2D designs and 2D type of project management to more using the digital world. So that's how we think that that's the best way to accommodate the change.
In terms of changing mindset, how helpful is it coming to a summit like this where you've got all the best minds from around the world together in one place?
Well, I think it's very important for the industry to get together and talk about the issues and look at what are the best ways to making that change, because like all things, if we don't change ourselves, we get change. So to me, really, seminars and conference like today, it's an important part in the industry and bringing the minds together and then deciding what is the best way to change the industry.
Some collaborative thinking.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.